steadily. Don't you stop rocking me till you know that I am fast asleep. Hold me closely, dear. Keep me safe and near. Because the world is so cold and we got a little fire burning here. You can steal all the covers, yeah, but don't you leave this bed. Days like this and us were made for each other. Who knows what will happen next? Oh. Tell me your secret, and I will tell a lie. I'll say it's Saturday morning and the stars are all still in the sky. Baby, you can fake it, pretend you're still asleep, but that smile on your face tells me you can hear everything. You can steal all the covers, yeah, but don't you leave this bed. Days like this and us were made for each other. Who knows what will happen next? Oh, oh. You can steal all the covers, but don't you leave, no, don't you leave this bed. Days like this and us were made for each other, and I'm not gonna give you up just yet. We can lay around and sleeping in for hours. We can get a little closer, baby, yeah. Just let me slip back underneath those covers. Who knows what will happen next? Oh, oh. Well, it's 12:01. I don't get up with the sun anymore. Since you've been gone, I haven't had a reason to anymore. See, when I call all the time and you're tired of the same old lines, you don't think it's funny anymore. Hang on to every single word I said. Yeah, you used to stand behind every dream I had.
You're listening to the Jams and Coffee Morning Show with your host, Brad Brock.
That's right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Jams and Coffee here in the morning. I am your host, Brad Brock. A pleasure to be here on another Monday, not just any other Monday. For those of you that are hip and in the know, and then now it is Indigenous Peoples Day. For some of us Gen Xers and younger and older millennials, we remember it as Columbus Day. As many retailers also remember it as Columbus Day and Columbus Day sales. And, if you're as old as me or perhaps older, you remember the old Christopher Columbus tune, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, whatever they taught us in school. Isn't it wonderful that we realize that half the shit that we learned in elementary school is just completely skewed or bizarre? And now that we have access to the culmination of human knowledge at our fingertips, we learned just how weird everything really was. But so officially Indigenous Peoples Day since last year. And I got a story to talk about on that, so we'll dive into that, and I'm happy to get your opinions on that as well. But some of you may have the day off of work. Some of you may not. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. Thank you so much for joining me this morning on YouTube or Facebook, or listening in on JNC Radio via the LIVE365 Radio App. Wherever you're tuning in, please make your way to our YouTube channel and subscribe. That would be wonderful. I appreciate that. We'll get a little check of the weather here before we dive into things. This morning, the temperatures are going to be in the low here on the Treasure Coast at any rate. The morning temperatures will be in the low to mid-70s with some isolated showers near the coast. Moving into the afternoon, the highs are going to be in the mid to upper 80s and scattered showers and storms drifting west throughout the day. Tonight, lows are going to be in the mid to upper 70s with some spotty showers into the evening. Tomorrow on Wednesday is looking like isolated morning coastal showers followed by afternoon inland showers and storms. The highs are going to be in the upper 80s. So it looks like fake fall in Florida is coming to an end. We'll get back to some humid nights and some storms until it finally calms down at the end of the month. We have Philip's irrelevant weather report. It's relevant to you. He says up there in Tennessee, it's still dry, but the fall weather's upon them. Overnight lows are in the mid-30s with frost on the pumpkins, and the highs are going to go near 80. And you have quite a stretch of temperature or wide range there. So tomorrow's basically a repeat with slightly higher temperatures. And he said, this has been your Morning Jams and Coffee Podcast Irrelevant Weather Report. I appreciate you tuning in, Philip. That's okay, man. I'm not a fan of super cold. Nor am I a fan of super hot. I find it that Florida really gives us the extremes, but for a couple of months in the year, we get this really, really nice middle of the road, into the 50s at nighttime and in the mornings, and then up into like the dry 70s, which I like to call it, whereas we don't have any humidity, and it's like a nice cool breeze. Oh, that's wonderful. We'll get that around the end of November and then December, January, and that's life. We'll have a couple nights where it's really cold. You can start a bonfire and put on a dusty jacket that we've not used in 8 months. Wonderful stuff. Aside from Indigenous Peoples Day and Columbus Day combined, we do have some other national days today. Let's take a peek and see. Today we have a National Metric Day. Who knew? On 10/10, National Metric Day recognizes the metric system, its history, and its benefits. The metric system uses decimals as a method of measuring mass, distance, and volume. Though Simon Steven, the Flemish mathematician, first suggested the system in his 1586 publication, the 10th, centuries passed before the metric system became an accepted form of measurement. The metric system uses the following base units: meter, gram, and liter. And those units are broken down by the power of 10. And the terms used for smaller and larger units carry across the base units. For example, a kilo is equal to the factor of 1,000, and deci is equal to the factor of 0.1. Kilometer, kilogram, kiloliter, all translate to be 1,000 of each base unit. We're not going to get into a math lesson here, but basically the metric system is the system widely used around the earth, and here in America we said no, we're not using that. Love it. It's also National Angel Food Cake, celebrated on October 10th. It's the delicious, light, and fluffy cake that many home cooks serve with fruits or glazes. Actually originated in the United States and first became popular in the late 19th century. Angel Food Cake was so named because of its airy lightness. It was said to be the food of the angels, you might have guessed. Making Angel Food Cake requires whipping egg whites until they are stiff. Cream of tartar stabilizes the egg whites, and additional ingredients are then folded into the egg white mixture. Philip says he still can't find his 10-millimeter socket. You nor anyone other. I believe that they're all collected together somewhere in the center of the earth. On the 10-millimeter sockets. Yeah, what a racket. Angel Food Cake Day also goes hand in hand with National Cake Decorating Day. Celebrated on October 10th, and it recognized the creative artist who elevates cake to another level. There you go. I actually have some friends that are really, really good at cake decorating. You can make some really, really cool cakes. What's that stuff they use to make cakes look like things? I forget what it's called. Fondant. Probably pronouncing it like a gringo. But, yes, fondant is that kind of like I don't know, it's like chewy frosting. Terrible. But the cakes look cool. It's also National Handbag Day. Random. Recognizes a versatile and utilitarian bag that goes by many names. That's all I think we really need to say about that. It's National Walk to a Park Day. Public parks and green spaces are a community's backyard. They offer nearby residents a place to play, connect, and reap the benefits of the outdoors. That's why National Walk to a Park Day on October 10th encourages us to walk to our local parks. Feel the wind on your face, take in the fall weather, visit with neighbors, play with your children, and appreciate all the benefits green spaces offer communities. Question, though, are parks open on Columbus Day? Something to ponder. The world may never know. It's also National Kick Butt Day. Interesting. What does that mean? It's observed annually on the second Monday in October. This is a day to give yourself a kick in the seat of the pants. The day aims to motivate marketers, advertisers, and those in the business world to work smarter and harder toward their goals. While striving to outdo the competitor, be sure to also take stock of your achievements and how far you've come. You made strides. Have you made strides you expected, the strides you expected at this point in your career? If not, check your goals. You have the right ones in place to kick butt. While the day was designed with business in mind, goals apply to everyone. From students to retirees, we all have a purpose. Not all goals have to be lofty. Consider these goals that just might still kick butt. Teach a child to read. Donate to a food bank 4 times a year. Shovel your neighbor's driveway. Not so effective here in Florida. You could call your parents once a month. Start a savings account. Learn to decorate a cake. Take a sign language class. Apply for a new job. You don't have to accept it. Or do you? Wash the dishes every night before bed. Lose 5 pounds, gain 5 pounds, and complete your holiday shopping. I do want to go back to apply for a new job. You know, this is a conversation that I had with Jordan recently. I mean, relatively recently, before she got into the job she was in. She was in between jobs and looking. And, she wanted to find the perfect job. And I was like, well, that's great. It is important to find a job that suits you. But what's also important is going through the interview process a dozen times before going into interview at the job that you really want. You know, get yourself up to snuff. See what people are asking these days. And so that when you walk in on the interview you really want, you get comfortable. It's time-consuming and it's, a little stressful. But it really keeps your chops up when it comes to talking about yourself, which is something that a lot of people don't really get around to doing much of in terms of their professional abilities. So it's going and interviewing for a job, whether you want the job or not, sometimes is actually really helpful to keeping your own brand, your personal brand, up to snuff and giving you an opportunity to practice, basically, selling yourself, which is what we do in job interviews anyway. So I find that interesting that it made it on that list. And who knows, as they say, you might find a job that surprised you, and you go for it anyway. But yeah, well, there you go. Kick Butt Day. Oh, here's a good one. A National Online Bank Day, which is likely closed because of Columbus Day. I see this is all coinciding on weird days. But on the second Monday in October, National Online Bank Day reminds us we don't have to take it to the bank to get it to the bank. This day celebrates the advantages offered by online banks. If you're not yet one of the millions of people who discover the convenience and ease of online banking, you're missing a great opportunity. It's true. I don't know. I mean, I still go to the bank to make, obviously cash deposits or things like that, but simple things or check deposits. No, man, I live that online banking life. I love it. I love it. It's wonderful. We live in the future. And you could still deposit checks and things, and despite the holiday. And we're cracking into our topic today. It's also a Native American Day, observed annually on the second Monday in October, and it celebrates, of course, the cultures and contributions of many Native American tribes. The observance is also known as Indigenous Peoples Day. And while it's not celebrated in all 50 states, it is recognized in both California and South Dakota and gaining popularity in the rest of the nation. Other parts of the country, Indigenous Peoples Day celebrations occur on this day. Events such as traditional dances, art displays, and ceremonies have begun to replace Columbus Day practices. The observance focuses on celebrating the culture, heritage, and history of the tribes across the nation. Each diverse nation carries its own traditions, rituals, and beliefs, and the day celebrates their knowledge, contributions, and enriching heritage. It's also a reminder of their enduring legacy of strength, energy, and fortitude. Yeah. Important. And, of course, Columbus Day. Celebrated also on the second Monday in October. And it's observed here in the United States each year. The day signifies Christopher Columbus's arrival to America on October 12, 1492, as the song said. Of course, Christopher Columbus was long given credit for discovering North America. However, long before Columbus was born, Leif Erikson landed on these shores. Leif Erikson. It sounds like a rock star, like somebody from the 70s that you'd go to a concert and see. The Italian-born explorer did sail across the Atlantic, though, and more than once. In fact, he made 4 transatlantic voyages. His first was in 1492, hence the little rhyme that we opened the show with. In 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. During that expedition, Columbus was looking for Asia. He didn't find it. He and his crew landed their 3 ships somewhere near the modern-day Bahamas. They may not have discovered an already populated continent. He did spur further exploration and colonization of North America. Phillips, he retracted his message. I didn't even get a chance to read it. Oh, there it is. Leif Garrett. That's probably why I'm thinking of it. Leif Erikson was the explorer, and Leif Garrett was the rock star for a moment. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. All right, well, so I guess it kind of like dives us into Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples Day. I'll tell you a little bit about Columbus Day, and then we'll read the article. Back in 1937, Columbus Day became a federal holiday in the U.S. Many instances of people observing Columbus's voyage exist since the colonial period. The 1792 celebrations recognizing the 300th anniversary of his landing in the New World took place in New York City and other U.S. cities. President Benjamin Harrison, you guys remember him, called upon the people of the United States to join in the celebration of Columbus on the 400th anniversary of the event. During the anniversary of 1892, teachers, preachers, poets, and politicians used the day to teach ideals of patriotism. These patriotic teachings were framed around themes of support for war, citizenship boundaries, and the importance of loyalty to the nation and celebrating social progress. In 1970, Columbus Day was changed to the current observance on the second Monday in October. Obviously, I wouldn't say that it's much of a debate as we have learned, through history and general being able to, as I mentioned, have access to the full spectrum of human history at our fingertips. The good, bad, the ugly. Whatever the case is, it's much more difficult to walk around in rose-colored glasses these days. So let's talk about what is Indigenous Peoples Day, and another burning question: is it offensive to celebrate Columbus Day? Well, there's everything you need to know, at least according to this article from USA Today. The second Monday, of course, has been a national holiday for close to a century. This will be only the second year that Indigenous Peoples Day has held that designation. Last October, President Joe Biden signed the first presidential proclamation of Indigenous Peoples Day, a commemoration turned holiday that began in 1977 to honor Native Americans' history and culture. That presidential stamp of approval was the most significant boost to date of efforts refocusing a federal holiday that for decades celebrated Christopher Columbus's discovery of America. And although few Americans are arguing that the notion of being off work come Monday, Columbus Day, and Indigenous Peoples Day have prompted political debate in states, cities, and municipalities around the U.S., especially in the last decade, with some pushing against change and others favoring Indigenous Peoples Day instead. And, of course, everybody's entitled to their opinion on that, I suppose. The truth of the matter is, it exists. So what is Indigenous Peoples Day? Well, if you need me to spell it out for you, here we go. The celebrating of an Indigenous Peoples Day took root, as I mentioned, back in 1977, an international conference on discrimination sponsored by the United Nations. It's grown as a day to honor Native American peoples and commemorates their histories and cultures. South Dakota was the first state to recognize the day in 1989, and the California cities of Berkeley and Santa Cruz soon followed. In 1990, the International Conference on Discrimination Against Indigenous Populations in the Americas, that's a mouthful, again sponsored by the United Nations, began discussing replacing Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day. California and Tennessee observed Native American Day in September, not conflicting with Columbus Day. Scott Stevens, the director of the Native American and Indigenous Studies program at Syracuse University, said Indigenous Peoples Day is about resilience of what past cultures have endured as much as it is about honoring heritage. It's the recognition of our survival and, in many cases, resistance and even flourishing, Stevens told USA Today. There's still a lot of social and economic problems that Indigenous communities experience. There's also this idea that American Indians and Native Americans, that we're all one people. But we have diversity, and our cultures are vastly different. One thing we all have in common is that our ancestors suffered because of American colonialism. So it serves as an opportunity where we can turn to each other in unity. So how and where is Indigenous Peoples Day celebrated? Over a dozen states and more than 130 local governments have chosen not to celebrate Columbus Day altogether or replace it with Indigenous Peoples Day. Many states celebrate both. 11 U.S. states celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day or a holiday of a similar name via a proclamation, while 10 others treat it as an official holiday. The 10 states that observe the holiday via proclamation are Arizona, California, Iowa, Louisiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, North Carolina, Virginia, Wisconsin, plus Washington, D.C. And the 10 that officially celebrated are Alabama, Alaska, Hawaii, Maine, Nebraska, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Oregon, South Dakota, and Vermont. Some tribal groups in Oklahoma celebrate Native American Day in lieu of Columbus Day, with some groups naming the day in honor of their individual tribes. More than 100 cities have replaced Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day, including Seattle, L.A., Boston, Denver, Phoenix, and San Francisco. Stevens said that Indigenous Peoples Day, being federally recognized, paves the way for more allies and a space for Americans to educate themselves on a deeper level as adults about atrocities throughout U.S. history. He said having a federal holiday can serve as less of a celebration, but more so a recognition to past and present experiences. I see Indigenous Peoples Day as an opportunity to have a more critical discussion about our American history, more than what people learn in the 4th grade about the first Thanksgiving in Pocahontas. He said having a day recognized or having critical discussion is not anti-American. What's anti-American is self-censoring, what we've been through, he said. So, the burning question, is it offensive to celebrate Columbus Day? Well, according to this article, said last year when Biden issued the proclamation for Indigenous Peoples Day, he also issued a proclamation of Columbus Day, established by Congress and first recognized as a national holiday in 1934 by Franklin D. Roosevelt. His 2021 speech praised the role of Italian Americans in U.S. society, but also referenced the violence and harm Columbus and other explorers of that age brought about on the Americas. Said we also acknowledge the painful history of wrongs and atrocities that many European explorers inflicted on tribal nations and indigenous communities. It's a measure of our greatness as a nation that we do not seek to bury these shameful episodes of our past, that we face them honestly, we bring them to light, and we do all we can to address them. Some groups argue that Columbus Day, which is still a federal holiday, celebrates Italian-American heritage. Many say the holiday glorifies an exploration that led to the genocide of Native peoples and paved the way for slavery. Stevens said celebrating Columbus Day is outdated because of the cyclical and residual hurt caused from the past. We've had American colonialism looked at through the history as not being a problem and celebrated as a good thing is deeply problematic to any of us who live in a Native American community or reservation. He also argued some Americans have a tendency to ignore that Native Americans were forced to be assimilated into Euro-American culture and hold a misconception that indigenous communities are only set in the past. He said, we're a minority of 3% in a land that in 1491 was 100% ours. Although Columbus is credited as the discoverer of the New World, millions of people already inhabited the Americas. Columbus made 4 expeditions to the Caribbean and South America over 2 decades, enslaving and decimating populations and opening the floodgates of European colonization. All true. Many groups have called for the removal of monuments to Columbus. Remember when that was a thing? Every statue had to come down, you guys. For over 500 years, indigenous people have been fighting for their survival, land, and rights. According to Les Begay, a Dene Nation member and co-founder of the Indigenous Peoples Day Coalition of Illinois, he said each October when Columbus is honored, it further diminishes and erases Native people, their history, and their culture. So, however, and feel free to chime in, you guys. I am watching the chats and comments, and, while I don't particularly think that the distinction between Indigenous Peoples Day and Columbus Day are polarizing, because it's actual history. It's not necessarily an opportunity for fake news. These are all documented historical things, not made up by modern people. But I'm always up for discussion, and as somebody who I mentioned I do mention myself quite often, but as somebody who grew up kind of on that apex of millennialism, I fondly remember many Columbus days with family and learning about Columbus and, not necessarily idolizing him, but looking up to him as some sort of amazing historical figure. And then, of course, going through my life, reading history, immersing myself in actual history and learning that he kind of sucked. Product of his time, I'm sure. How else do you deal with these kinds of things back then? I don't know. I wasn't there. Neither were any of you. So it's hard to think about what we would have done in those same positions. However, as we should as a society, we can look back on those things and say, didn't do it quite right. And, and try to make it better for next time. So, do I think that Columbus Day should just be thrown out the window? I don't know. I'm personally myself quite okay with calling it Indigenous Peoples Day and switching over to that. I will probably, likely, because it's ingrained in my soul, fondly remember Columbus or whatever contributions he may have added to the world. But not arrogant enough to dismiss something new and some things that have come to light. And once you open Pandora's box, it's very difficult to close it again. And I haven't worn rose-colored glasses in a very, very long time. So however you decide to celebrate today, just do it safely and be kind to one another. We don't always have to agree, but it's okay to let it go and have a drink and get on with our lives. Not everybody has to be our best friend, but we certainly should try to get along. And with that, I think I'll take a quick music break, re-up a little bit on my coffee here, and we'll get into some celebrity birthdays, and I got a couple music stories for you, some interesting stuff. Not a really big news day as far as things I prefer to talk about here, but if you guys have anything to add, I am watching the chats and comments, and if you want to chat with me, you can call in on the studio line, 772-888 1596. Follow the prompts, and it'll let me know that you're on the line. Otherwise, what do we want to play? What do I want to play for you guys today? Let's see. Yeah, let's do this one. Here's Throw It Down by Arrowant from their album Dragon. You can listen to it wherever you listen to music. Enjoy this. You're listening to Jams and Coffee. We'll be right back.
true. You say I'm lazy, oh yeah. It's not me, it's you. Oh, it's you. You take my love away and you throw it in. Throw it down again. You take my soul away, oh, I love you. Nothing I can do. Time again. You take my love away and you throw it
You're listening to the Jams and Coffee Morning Show.
Thank you, Jessica. Of course you are listening to the Jams and Coffee Morning Show. Appreciate you tuning in with me this morning. Yeah, we're just talking about Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples Day. So feel free to let me know your thoughts on it. To say that there's a controversy is really kind of ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. It's a no-brainer. There's something, like as I said before the break, you let the cat out of the bag, and there's really no putting it back in. But I'm happy to hear your thoughts on the whole Columbus versus Indigenous Peoples debate, if it's called that. But in the meantime, got some celebrity birthdays today. Because we like to celebrate celebrities. Celebrate. Turning 37 years old today, indie pop singer-songwriter. Best known by her stage name, Marina and the Diamonds. Marina Diamandis. Turned 37. Her first album, The Family Jewels, was released back in 2010. And she's cool. If you guys are interested in listening to something new, I might have to throw her songs back into rotation on JNC Radio. She's got some good tunes. So, Marina, happy 37th birthday. Mario Lopez, turning 49 years old today. Of course, he initially gained fame on Saved by the Bell, then moved on into other endeavors, such as Dancing with the Stars, MTV's America's Best Dance Crew. He later reprised his role in Saved by the Bell, The New Class. In 2016, he portrayed Vince Fontaine in the Fox broadcast of Grease Live. Well, there you go. Happy birthday, Mario Lopez. Pop and R&B singer Maya, turning 43 years old today. She's known for her contribution to the cover of Lady Marmalade with Christina Aguilera, Pink, and Lil' Kim. Her single, My Love Is Like Whoa, became gold certified. Maya, I wonder what she's out there doing these days. She's great. The American voice actress and singer who became known for voicing Ariel in the Little Mermaid films, Jodie Benson, turning 61 years old today. Her discography includes the soundtracks for The Little Mermaid and Thumbelina. Brett Favre, NFL legend, of course, turning 53 years old today, became the first quarterback to throw over 70,000 yards, complete over 6,000 passes, and tally over 500 touchdowns in his career, mostly spent with the Green Bay Packers. He became the first player to win 3 AP NFL MVP awards in a row. That led the Packers to victory in Super Bowl 31. Seems like a lifetime ago. He's in some hot water now, though I don't know if he's particularly in hot water over some scandals going on that his name has been thrown around in. Hopefully that doesn't blemish his career and legacy. But happy birthday at any rate. Dale Earnhardt Jr., turning 48 years old today. He retired. He's a retired NASCAR racer who won the Busch Series Championship in 1998 and 1999 and the Daytona 500 in 2004 and 2014. He went on to become an analyst for NASCAR on NBC. Of course, his father, Dale Earnhardt, sadly passed away during a race many, many years ago, but was himself an absolute NASCAR legend. Interesting to note that Dale Earnhardt Sr. was 49 when he passed away in that car crash. And Dale Earnhardt now at 48 years old. So interesting parallel or crossroad, I suppose. David Lee Roth, a rock vocalist from Van Halen, 1974 to 1985, turning 68 years old today. He, of course, went on to pursue a solo career and had a webcast on YouTube called The Roth Show, turning 68. I have a story about him, too. We'll get right into that after I get through these rest of these birthdays. U.S. country singer Tanya Tucker, turning 68 also today. She was 1991's Country Music Association Singer of the Year. She's best known for her debut hit, Delta Dawn, which she released when she was just 13 years old. She's topped the U.S. country music charts 10 times and starred in her own fly-on-the-wall television show, Tuckerville, back in 2005. Happy birthday, Tanya Tucker. Turning 70 years old today, the wife of Ozzy Osbourne, Sharon Osbourne. Of course, she's not just the wife of Ozzy Osbourne. She's done quite a bit of things in her own television talk show. She's been on other talk shows as a host and has been the personal manager of Ozzy Osbourne since the beginning of time, really. I think the dinosaurs were still roaming the earth. But Sharon Osbourne turning 70 years old today. So happy birthday to all of you celebrities out there. Moving back to David Lee Roth. In fact, Ozzy Osbourne recently shared his first meeting with David Lee Roth and asking what's wrong with him. As we all know, David Lee Roth, quite a character in music and in life. And it's no secret that Black Sabbath famously gave Van Halen its first big break on tour in 1978, inviting the Southern California up-and-comers to open for them on the Never Say Die tour. The tour proved to be a turning point for both acts. It was Ozzy Osbourne's last with Sabbath before he was fired and launched his solo career, and it also put Van Halen on the world stage for the very first time, setting the band up for its legendary career. In a new conversation with Revolver, Ozzy recalls meeting Van Halen for the first time, his impression of Eddie Van Halen, who went on to become lifelong friends with Tony Iommi, and David Lee Roth. Ozzy said, Eddie was such a great guy. They came to our local pub, and it was good fun, he recalled. But David Lee Roth, he's lost a couple of nuts and bolts. When you meet him, it's like, what's wrong with him? He's like somewhere else, you know? That's what Ozzy said. Ozzy's impression of Roth echoes Sammy Hagar's own assessment of the Van Halen co-founder. Hagar, who succeeded Roth in Van Halen in 1985 and later toured alongside him in 2002, said that Roth was impossible to get to know and seemed to always be either performing for people around him or isolating himself in his dressing room. He said he wasn't ever around. He hides out. You never see him, Hagar said of their 2002 tour. He puts on this whole big front and comes out, I'm here, David Lee Roth is here, and then he goes and hides again. I don't think he's happy. He's never been married and never had a relationship, never had children. It's like, man, how do you live like that? I don't know. That was according, of course, to Sam Hagar. Roth himself claims to have maintained a close relationship with Alex Van Halen in the years since the final Van Halen tour, but Wolfgang Van Halen has said that despite playing in Van Halen for a decade himself, he has virtually no personal relationship with David Lee Roth. More recently, Wolf has strongly suggested that Roth is the reason the rumored Eddie Van Halen tribute concert is not happening. There you go. And he's still out there. He's still doing things. David Lee Roth just dropped a brand new tune a month ago, 2 months ago now. I don't know. But it kind of, recounted some of the antics that the boys in the band used to get into. So, I never looked at David Lee Roth and was like, well, that's a man that has everything together. He doesn't seem squirrely at all. But undeniable performer and musician. So, yeah. And he's celebrating a birthday today, 68. Ozzy. Like he's got room to talk. Also in some music news, we reported last week that Dua Lipa, in case you know who Dua Lipa is, we reported that she was getting really close to Trevor Noah, the former host of The Daily Show. And I was a little heartbroken because I have a celebrity crush on Dua Lipa. But in a report that came out over the weekend, she confirms that she's single. She said, and it's been really great. So the article goes on to say that Dua Lipa may have been spotted looking cozy with Trevor Noah recently, but the levitating singer says right now she's not dating anyone. She clarified her relationship status in the latest episode of her podcast, Dua Lipa at Your Service. Speaking to her guest, fellow British pop star Charlie or Charlie? I don't know. Charlie XCX. She's awesome too. Dua said, for me, this is the first year I've not been in a relationship for a very long time. She added, it's been really great to just be alone and only think about myself and kind of be quite selfish. She's never really had the opportunity to do. But when you find someone that really softens you and calms you down, I think it's the Leo thing. It makes a big difference. Dua and her boyfriend of 2 years, Anwar Hadid, reportedly ended things back in December of 2021, and Dua subsequently told July 2022 issue of Vogue, the next chapter of my life is about truly being good with being alone. Jordan just texted me, and she was like, a crush on Dua Lipa, eh? I can't get anything past her. Not even on my own radio show. Some other music news here. If Pam is listening, she's going to give a classic Pam eye roll here on this one, because this story is about Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift was being praised on the set of Amsterdam by none other than Christian Bale, who is notorious for really just trashing people on set. But he's also an incredible actor. So what are you going to do? He said that Taylor Swift was fantastic, incredibly generous, and fit right in on the Amsterdam set. He went on to say Taylor Swift did a bang-up job on the set of her new movie Amsterdam, according to her Oscar-winning co-star, Christian Bale. It was even nice enough not to tell him he's an awful singer. Oscar winner Christian Bale stars in the David O. Russell film, along with John David Washington and Margot Robbie. Taylor plays Elizabeth Meekins, who wants Bale and Washington's characters, a doctor and an attorney, respectively, to investigate the suspicious death of her father, an army general who founded the regiment where the two men first met. She just became part of the team. She was fantastic, Bale tells ABC Audio. She just showed up, and she was playing her character, and she fit right in. Movies, they move pretty quickly, You got to get going right away. Bale says he also had the great privilege and sort of surprise of finding myself singing alongside Taylor in the film. In fact, he and Washington both sang with Taylor, despite the fact that they're not exactly on her level vocal-wise. She was incredibly generous and not just looking at me and going, please shut up, you're awful, because I am, Bale laughs. Me and J.D. Washington, half of the time we were forgetting the lyrics and being off-key. At one point, after Taylor, and Washington had been trying to film the singing scene for hours, Bale says David O. Russell told them, hey, I just got an idea. Christian and JD, how about you just shut up for a second and we'll just record Taylor? And Bale laughs. He said, oh my God, we suddenly realized that we had been destroying this song all day long when there was this angel right next to us singing it beautifully, and it gave me goosebumps. Her talent is incredible, so... Christian Bale loves Taylor Swift. He's a Swiftie. Sorry, Pam, if you're listening, I'm sorry. I know that was a tough one to get through. We did it. We did it, and we did it together. How about that? What else can we talk about today? Like I said, there wasn't really a whole lot of news going on. I guess maybe we'll just dive into our top 10. Then I got some shameless plugs, and then I'll let you get on with your day. So let's take a look at the shameless plugs today. Yeah, this is a good one. Let me get it to a font size that is acceptable to me. So founded in 1790, the United States Coast Guard is the only military service part of the Department of Homeland Security. The U.S. Coast Guard is a branch of the United States Armed Forces whose primary responsibility is to maintain the security and safety of the U.S. people through the enforcement of maritime law. The U.S. Coast Guard's maritime law enforcement responsibility includes protecting U.S. ports and waterways, military, humanitarian, and diplomatic safety. Overall, the U.S. Coast Guard protects the infrastructure and economic resources of the U.S. coasts and international waters from internal and external threats. Despite being one of the country's oldest military organizations, many people still don't know about the history and responsibilities of this military branch. So let's dive right into the 10 things you didn't know about the U.S. Coast Guard in this Monday edition of the JNC Top 10. Here we go. All right. Number 10 here on our list of 10 things you may not know about the U.S. Coast Guard is that the U.S. Coast Guard is part of the military. Seems like a no-brainer, but some people, think it's like a police agency. The long-held misconception about the U.S. Coast Guard is that it's not part of the military. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. USCG may not be part of the U.S. Department of Defense, but it is an arm of the United States Armed Forces, also known as the military. Previously, the USCG fell under the Department of Transportation, but after passing a recent legislative law, it was transferred to the Department of Homeland Security. The Coast Guard is considered an arm of the military because during conflict or war, the president has the power to transfer U.S. Coast Guard assets to the Navy. Additionally, the USCG seniority ranks are similar to that of the Navy. The most senior Coast Guard officer is the 4-star Admiral Coast Guard Commandant. Over time, the USCG has held various capacities, which include maritime law enforcement, search and rescue, environmental protection, aids to navigation, military readiness, and port protection. Yeah, how about that? Number 9. Sometimes people confuse the Navy for the Coast Guard because at a glance their mission feels similar. Well, the truth is that the U.S. Coast Guard and the Navy have different capacities and responsibilities and, consequently, different missions. Coast Guard is an arm of the military tasked with maritime law enforcement, as we mentioned. On the other hand, the Navy's mission is to train, maintain, and equip a force that fights to maintain U.S. waters' freedom and economic liberty. The Navy is an arm of the Department of Defense. There's also a significant difference between the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard duty stations. The Navy has bases worldwide and deploys members depending on their specialty. For example, if you're a Navy aviator, you could be based in San Diego but operate an aircraft that can go anywhere should the situation demand. Coast Guard's duty stations have air stations and other bases to coordinate their asset activities. They also have stations along the U.S. coastline to ensure timely responses to rescue missions and other maritime emergencies. Their organization is also quite different. The U.S. Coast Guard has 11 main areas of operation: waterways, ports, drug interdiction, maritime safety, aid and navigation, marine environmental protection, defense readiness, migrant interdiction, ice operations, and search and rescue. And then the Navy is divided into 8 communities: special operations, that's the SEAL team, surface, air, undersea, amphibious, expeditionary warfare, cyber warfare, and space. There you go. Number 8 on this list. The U.S. Coast Guard can deploy members to serve in different missions. Time away can range from a few weeks to several months, depending on the demands and operations of the task. The deployment history of the U.S. Coast Guard dates as far back as 1790, having participated in major U.S. conflicts, including World War II, the Vietnam War, and Operation Iraqi Freedom. Overall, the U.S. Coast Guard has actively participated in 17 wars and conflict missions. Still, under deployment, it's essential to note that the Coast Guard is the oldest maritime enforcement force in the U.S. and formed earlier than the U.S. Navy. It also predates several federal and military forces. Been around a long time, folks. Number 7. Being an excellent swimmer seems like a no-brainer to join the Coast Guard. But it's surprising to learn that half of the people who try out the Coast Guard swimming test actually fail. Many underestimate the skill required to become a Coast Guard rescue swimmer. For the Coast Guard rescue team swimming test, an instructor will ask participants to dive into a pool from a 5-foot height and swim for 328 feet in about 5 minutes. These recruits aren't allowed to use swimming goggles or touch the side or bottom of the pool. Additionally, they'll need to pass a 5-minute treading water test without using a life jacket. Seems easy enough, but it's not. If they fail these tests, they'll need to supplement their regular training classes with additional swimming lessons. Passing the swimming test is a mandatory requirement for graduating from basic U.S. Coast Guard training. Not surprisingly, it's an automatic disqualification for recruitment if someone is afraid of swimming, touching, or being near the water. Duh. You're in the wrong place if you're afraid of water. Number 6 on the list. The Coast Guard has 2 flags. You know, the Coast Guard Ensign and the Coast Guard Standard. The Coast Guard Ensign flag consists of 16 perpendicular stripes and alternating red and white, representing the 16 United States at the time, with the union of the ensign in dark blue on a white background in the corner. The main purpose of the Coast Guard Ensign flag was to distinguish revenue cutter vessels from merchant vessels. The earliest illustration of the Coast Guard Standard flag was created in 1917, and it depicts the Coast Guard Standard flag as white with a blue eagle surrounded by a 13-star semicircle. Later, the Coast Guard redesigned the flag to include United States Coast Guard Semper Paratus. They also changed the semicircle to a 13-star circle. Coast Guard 34 battle steamers adorn the Coast Guard Standard during ceremonies and parades. The U.S. Coast Guard adopted the current Coast Guard Standard flag in 1964, relatively recently, in the last 50 years or so. Number 5. Believe it or not, the Coast Guard is one of the most difficult military arms to join. Recruits fewer members than any other military branches and has strict qualifying requirements. For starters, you have to pass the essential physical fitness and citizenship prerequisites. Next, your academic qualifications have to be above average. To qualify for the U.S. Coast Guard, you need a college degree or high school diploma and a minimum of 54 points on the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery Test. They prioritize recruits who perform better than the minimum aptitude test grades because they compete better with their fellows. They accept GEDs under rare circumstances. Additionally, participants have to go through security clearance and credit checks. The Coast Guard has the lowest medical and criminal history waivers in the military, which speaks to their strict requirements. Additionally, it's the only military branch where a shellfish allergy disqualifies you from joining. No exception. So, if you can't eat a shrimp or an oyster, you can't join the U.S. Coast Guard. Overall, the Coast Guard recruitment process requires high professionalism, respect, honesty, physical ability, and work ethic. Who knew? And number 4 here on our list of 10 things you may not know about the U.S. Coast Guard. Alex P. Haley, born in 1922, and the eldest of 4 children, was the U.S. Coast Guard's first chief journalist. Haley began his career with the U.S. Coast Guard as a mess attendant at 18. He started to learn the art of letter writing while serving aboard the the Mendota, and the Merzin during World War II. During this time, he would send at least 40 letters weekly to friends and family and receive just as many. Soon after, members on board and sailors started noticing his letter-writing skills. They would pay him to write letters to their lovers. Besides letter writing, Haley also learned story writing and would compile stories about sailors. After World War II, Haley pursued his writing interest and later requested a transfer to a journalist rating. Even though the Coast Guard did not have a journalist rating at the time, it recognized Haley's skills and made him the first U.S. Coast Guard journalist. Until his retirement in 1959, Alex Haley served as a permanent assistant to the Coast Guard Public Relations Officer. In 1977, Alex Haley's world bestseller Roots received a Pulitzer Prize for fiction. He was also recognized for his autobiography of Malcolm X, a compilation of his conversations with him. During his journalism career, Alex Haley became a senior editor at Reader's Digest and wrote many popular interviews for them and Playboy magazine, including those of Martin Luther King Jr., George Lincoln, Rockwell, and Miles Davis. A storied career there. Started out in the Coast Guard. Number 3, until the establishment of the Navy Department in 1798, the Coast Guard was the only armed force afloat. Coast Guard's history started in 1790 after President George Washington signed an act authorizing the construction of vessels to prevent smuggling and to enforce trade laws and federal tariffs. In the late 19th and early 20th century, these vessels were referred to as a system of cutters or revenue cutters. Later, they adopted their official name and became the Revenue Cutter Service. They continued to use that name until 1915 when they were renamed the Coast Guard after Congress merged their service with the U.S. Life-Saving Service. Life-Saving Service consisted of several stations distributed on the coastline. They were operated by crew members willing to risk their lives to save those working and traveling by sea. And the U.S. Coast Guard became the official maritime navigation system maintenance military arm in 1939. Later, Coast Guard adopted the responsibility of licensing marine vessels and enforcing maritime laws. Coast Guard's responsibility remains one of the most critical military functions in protecting and maintaining the nation's ports, coastline, and marine life. There you go. Just 2 more here on this list. Number 2 here, the U.S. Coast Guard is the second smallest military force after the Space Force. Currently, the Coast Guard has about 42,000 full-time service members, 8,000 reservists, 8,000 civilians, and 31,000 auxiliary volunteers, compared to about 200,000 active service Marine Corps and 550,000 Army servicemen. Coast Guard is a smaller military arm. However, the U.S. Coast Guard is the world's largest and most powerful Coast Guard, rivaling the size and capabilities of other countries' Navy forces. Good to know. And number 1, the Coast Guard does more than enforce maritime laws. Even though maritime law enforcement in the U.S. Coast Guard's primary duty, it's only one of the several duties that fall under their jurisdiction. Other responsibilities that fall into the Coast Guard's purview include search and rescue and drug interdiction. Search and rescue means that the Coast Guard is responsible for preventing or minimizing the loss of lives and property at sea. And this is one of their oldest missions, as explained by their late 19th and early 20th century distribution of rescue houses along the coastline. The Coast Guard works closely with federal agencies and other partners to disrupt, dismantle, and prevent illegal drug organizations from crossing the U.S. coastline. Conducts a drug interdiction mandate within the transit zone, a coastline of about 6 million square miles. Other less-known duties of the U.S. Coast Guard include enforcing international conventions on the repatriation of migrants and dealing with human smuggling, developing and enforcing laws that maintain the marine ecosystem, prevent illegal ocean dumping, and stop the discharge of hazardous substances at sea, and oil spillages are just a few things the Coast Guard deals with daily. They also enforce international agreements to minimize illegal fishing and protect the country's exclusive economic zones from occupation by unauthorized fishing vessels. And finally, the U.S. Coast Guard supports the Department of Defense in its national military strategy by conducting environmental protection, intercept operations, pest control, and providing airspace security in Washington, D.C. So there are 10 things you may not have known about the U.S. Coast Guard. We love the Coasties. All right. I've got just a few shameless plugs for you. Of course, the most important is please go and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're watching it there right now, just smash the subscribe button. I appreciate that. If you're watching anywhere else, pop over to our YouTube channel and give it a subscribe. We really appreciate that. We've made some progress over the last couple of weeks, but we still got a long way to go to reach that coveted 1,000 subscriber mark, which we're desperately trying to get to. And it's a slow go, but I do appreciate each and every one of you that have taken the time to check it out and subscribe. It means a lot. Philip said, shameless plug time. That's right. What else? I think I have a show tomorrow night, so I guess I'll reiterate tomorrow on the morning show, but Tuesday night, it's one of my only shows this half of the week. I'll be at the Tipsy Tiki in Fort Pierce, weather permitting, of course. Hopefully it clears up and we have a nice night, but I'll be there from 6 to 10 tomorrow night. Come and catch my show there. It's a great place, full liquor bar. It's owned by the folks from Pierce Cider, so there's great cider on tap and beers. A really cool stage, plenty of room to stretch out, and it's outdoors. It's wonderful. It's really a nice place, and they're doing a really great job sprucing it up themselves with the help of Steve Fogel, who's an amazing artist, who's really putting some work into making the place interesting and cool. So check out the Tipsy Tiki. I'll be there tomorrow night. What else? Check out JNC Radio. It's if you're looking for interesting new indie style music, it's a great place, and we feature a lot of local entertainers around our Treasure Coast area and beyond on that channel as well. You can find it on our website at jncpodcast.com. You play it straight from there, from your browser, or you can download the Live365 Radio App. It's completely free, nothing to sign up for. You download it, you open it up, search for JNC Radio, and boom, it's playing on your phone. You can Bluetooth it to your car. You can cast it to your television or your smart speaker or whatever. And it's good. It's good. It's good. I keep adding and adding some new stuff every now and then, taking some stuff out, so we try to keep it relatively fresh. So check that out. Speaking of jncpodcast.com, check that out too. It's really the epicenter of everything that we do. So if there's, you're unsure, because I say, visit us here, visit us there. You can find the links to all of that stuff right at jncpodcast.com. You can watch this video every morning. You can watch our podcasts. You can listen to our podcasts. You can listen to the radio. You can check out our social media, sign up for our mailing list. It's limitless. You can also check out Paul's Drums and Rums podcasts and his various content offerings. Really, really great stuff there as well. So subscribe to Paul's channels. This week on the podcast, we have a great entertainer. His name is Mike Lebec, and he's awesome. I can't wait to sit down. We've known each other for a while now. But really haven't had an opportunity to sit down and really get to know one another. So it's going to be a great show. Hopefully we could squeeze a song or two out of him here in the studio. But really looking forward to meeting him. I know it's few and far between when we have proper features here on the Jams and Cocktails podcast. We do a lot of shenanigans, a lot of pop culture talking, but it is really fun when we get some guests that we're unfamiliar with in those terms, and really get to know some new people. So this is another opportunity, and so we're going to be featuring some of his music and talking about some shows. He just recently relocated, I guess, to Vero Beach, so now he's a local. We'll talk about that and all the places he's playing around town. And that's this Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, Jams and Cocktails. Other than that, I think that's it for my shameless plugs. If I forgot to shamelessly plug something, please bring it to my attention. But until then, you guys, I hope you enjoy your Indigenous Peoples Day or Columbus Day, however you decide to honor the day. Honor yourselves by having a good one. And take care of yourselves. Be kind to each other. Broadcasting live, of course, from the legendary JNC Lounge. I'm Brad Brock. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye!
Tune in again tomorrow morning for the latest local buzz, national headlines, music news, and more on JNC in the Morning, right here on Facebook and YouTube.